Hello again, Steve here with an addition to the many discussions that are going on about to do with the topic of Lauren Southern and who is it, Brittany Pettibone and Martin Sellner, for different reasons being banned or kicked out of or whatever out of England, and people a lot of people seem to have a great degree of shock, and of course very many on the left are kind of happy that this happens, of course, it's totalitarians. But those who want freedom of speech are, seem to have a great degree of outrage as if this is something new. Now, I'm not going to say that I have any claim to greater knowledge than anybody. A lot of people are doing awesome work to expose this sort of thing. I just thought I would give my 2 bits for those 4 or 5 people who might watch this as to the importance of this in terms of when I talk a lot about, freedom in our Genie project, how we can improve the quality of our lives and so on. Well, it's also important for us to be aware of what's going on in the world, the awareness of human nature, the awareness of, the health of our societies too, right? Because our health is so dependent on, the greater liberty that we have, the greater quality of life that we can have. So it's important to have this discussion and to add to the discussion if there's anything to be added. Well, I want to make a couple of points, which is that I've talked about the occult nature of 666 a while back from my understanding of it in its origin, which is that, man, the origin of the Christian story, or even goes way far beyond the Christian story, the Jewish story, and probably the Sumerians and whatnot before, man born on the 6th day, or created on the 6th day by God, right? And then everything that comes from man is related to 6. So then man creates something, and then man becomes what he creates, right? Which is what the citizen is. The citizen is the mark of the beast, as far as I go in terms of an occult, going back far enough thing. We sell ourselves. We represent. We represent ourselves rather than just being present as man, and that's why in the law there's almost never any mention of man, because the admission is that there's no control of man. Now, I know I have shills who will come on and say, Steve, you're full of shit, and maybe I am. Hey, I submit maybe I am, but why should I have my head crunched for that? I'm just sharing an opinion, right? That's all. Now, one of the things, or more an opinion, analysis, right? I'm sharing analysis here. One of the books you might want to consider having a look at some point, it's called Discipline and Punish, and it's a historical look at how the law, the capital law, right? Because that's not really law. When they call it the law, they got to dress it up as something, right? They don't call it law. Law is gravity and things like that. And then there's probably, you could say, okay, there's probably natural law and so on, with universal prohibitions on rape and theft and killing other people and lying and whatnot, right? Those show up in a lot of different things. Then there's all this other stuff, which is all surrounded about making freedom illegal. I've actually done a number of videos way back when, and many hundreds of videos. Maybe if I can find it, I'll put a link in the content below, where I talk about that, about how freedom has to be made illegal. And one of the ways it is made, and one of the ways the promotion of lack of freedom is made, instilled into the propaganda system, is through the public display of punishment of those who step out of line. Like in here, he talks about how back in the day they were much more draconian, and it seems to be coming that way more again, but they would put people on scaffolds and so on in public display who stepped out of line. And the idea was that the public would come down and see this and say, hey, look, if you want to end up like this, if you don't want to end up like this, rather, don't step out of line. Don't act out freely. Don't step out of line of what the king says, right? So, and then of course that was back in the days of the kings and whatnot. And then along came socialism, right? And you can get a good look at this, which is a book called Totalitarian Democracy, which is, a lot of it is, the history of the French Revolution and so on, and how these early Philosophes, displayed this idea of this egalitarian society, right, where they replaced the king with the great common good or whatever, and they redefined freedom, because the idea is that everybody wants freedom, but they realize that people cannot be free to be in a totalitarian system, so they redefine what freedom is. And that's a very common trick of the leftists, of course, to keep on redefining things. Anyways, I won't get into it that deep yet, but I think what I think what's bewildering to me though about a lot of this video footage that I've been watching about how people are incredibly surprised by the detainment of the likes of Southern and Pettibone and so on, is that this is constantly going on, and anybody who pushes the limit is going to be clamped down upon. For example, Michael Savage, some of you will be aware of him. I mean, he was banned from England back in 2006 for saying something that was politically incorrect. I don't know sure what it was. Something to do with Muslims. Surprise, surprise. Banned from England. Dr. Laura Schlesinger was banned from Canada for saying something about homosexuals. Surprise, surprise. Right? This is nothing new. Dean Clifford, imprisoned for political reasons. At least he was told ostensibly, I don't have any actually evidence of that, but he was told by that he was imprisoned for political reasons in Canada. Of course, he defended himself against a cop, which you're not supposed to do, apparently, too. And so that gave him good excuse to throw him in a cage for many, many months without a charge, without any charges sticking. Eventually, they were able to stick something to him. I'm not sure what it was, but so I'm not surprised. I hate to say this, but I'm not surprised that when people like Pettibone and Southern and so on are saying things that government doesn't like, that government will clamp down on them. And government will make shit up. That's what they do. They're not going off of real law, the law of the nature or whatever. They're not going after fundamental things like theft and rape and fraud and whatnot against these people. They're going after them for things like terrorist acts and just making stuff up as they go, or they're applying. So what happens, you see, is that their so-called law is so vast, is so voluminous, that they can haul in anybody at any moment for violating something. What is it? Most people will violate, I don't know, maybe, who knows, maybe 50, maybe 100 of their statute, nuances in the course of a day that you could be, hauled in for. And so when they get to the point of that you are a threat, like freedom might start to break out, and people might start to ask, well, what do we need these guys for? Well then, yeah, you're a danger. And that's when the part of the law, which is social engineering, which is what this guy talks about, is enacted, and these people have to be shut down. Now, and that's one of the reasons I agree with some people who say that, things like Bitcoin and so on that are attempts to skirt around the main financiers of this coercive government, which is the banking cartels. If that goes up too high and too fast and becomes too big, government and the psychopaths within that, with the control of the media and the control of the military in particular, and the control of the spy networks, will go after these people and make them illegal, make their activity, make the owning of this Bitcoin and whatever illegal. Guaranteed, if it goes up too fast. And it's just the nature of the beast. And this is why I've been talking about over and over and over again. We got to take our minds off of, as much as we can, we got to be aware of these. We got to be aware of what's going on. And at times we have to use the citizenship that we can. We got to, if we want to go somewhere, we practically have to carry a passport. Even though that is, you could say is like a mark of the beast. But what else are we going to do, right? It's when we act, as long as we know why we're acting, and not thinking that it is us. I know this sounds a little bit convoluted, but what I'm really basically saying is I am not surprised And the reason I'm not surprised is because this has been going on as modus operandi, or if that's the right term, I don't know, as the methodology of controlling vast swaths of people for a long, long time. And in the recent history, I'm not sure why it's not being brought up. I suspect that a lot of people don't like Michael Savage, the commentators on YouTube and so on, because he is a bit brash. He's a bit of a bloviator and all that, for sure. But I'm not sure why it's not brought up more often. That this guy was banned from England. So England's very famous at this, banning people. I mean, they don't like free speech, apparently. So they banned Michael Savage way back. That's 2006. That's a long time ago. So folks, those of you who think that what's happening to Lauren Southern and Pettibone and whatnot is a new thing, it's not a new thing, right? It's not a new thing. And I became aware of Dr. Lauren Schlesinger being banned from the Canadian Airways back close to 10 years ago. And the person who told me gleefully told me that it was a wonderful thing that Dr. Laura was banned. And I was thinking, how can you think like that? So free speech is not a good thing then. So we should have some kind of a police thing. Somebody should be the arbiter of what you can say. And that seems like a good thing. Well, apparently leftists believe that. And it's a tactic. I don't think it's a good thing. I think that we should have more free speech rather than less free speech. That creates more freedom. But freedom, of course, is always the opposite of what totalitarians want. And that's why, as I said before, and I will say it again, freedom always has to be made illegal. Absolutely illegal. And the way they make it illegal is by outright, illegalizing and threatening people and creating social engineering by putting people on either the literal scaffold or in the scaffolds that they can get away with these days, which is not quite as draconian, but nevertheless, it is a clampdown. It's just, I think it's going to continue as far as we let the left get away with this stuff. And the left is embedded deeply into the state. Actually, in this book here, we also talk about censorship and how, these sort of things, like you won't hear about Lauren Southern in the mainstream media being banned from England. You won't hear the Canadian Prime Minister going to the British, immediately flying to England and doing something about this. You won't hear this. No, of course not. Because it's all part of the censorship apparatus that's been going on for a long time. Now, in this book, they talk about the necessity of censorship. And censorship is a critical pillar. It's a critical pillar of totalitarian democracies, which is what began in the French Revolution and has continued to unfold. He talks about 150 years ago, it's been 200 years pretty much now, continuing to unfold. And it's what we're seeing. And that's why we're seeing the pushback now. Well, let's see who wins. Let's see who wins. Is the pushback going to win? Or is the totalitarian bulldozer going to win? Well, I guess time will tell. Time will tell. And it will tell based on how many people will speak up and put their safety and their life on the line and so on. So I think that it's an important conversation, because whenever we're going to talk about health, whenever we're going to talk about our potentials, whenever we're going to talk about what it is that we can create in the world to have purpose and to have a life that's meaningful, to have real quality in our life, it's also a good discussion to see how healthy our society is. And we see this shit going on. It's not great for the health. But we also have to understand it's nothing new. It's nothing new. It's been going on. And if we ignore also, if we just focus on this one, and we're ignoring people like Michael Savage, Dr. Laura Schlesinger, if we're ignoring these people as well, then we're maybe not aware of it, right? So I'm hopefully going to make people aware that this is not new. This has been going on. And let's not forget, let's become aware of people like Schlesinger and Savage as well. Let's become aware of those people who were put on the rack years ago, because this sort of stuff can happen again, and it's important that we're part of the solution, I think. It's important that we're part of the solution for our own health. It's also important that we're part of the solution for our community's health, because it begins with us, but it also begins with us speaking up. Steve here again, great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye for now.